it is time for more grassroots movements. That was my aha moment. We've done something in the US to say that the global community no longer matters. The US is losing that position as a global leader. Wake up. We are all a part of a global community already. It's happened. So if we want to be a global leader, we better act like it.
Tony, most of the world, or the most part of the world, know the OvaHimba people, especially just through the glossy photographs that they see. And when they look at the OvaHimba people, it's obviously through they see the red ochre skin, the open chest of women, and they are actually also headlines of them that are being called one of Africa's last untouched tribe. But you have spent most of your time in OvaHimba community, living with OvaHimba people. So tell us maybe honestly, so is the world being sold a lie about who they really are?
I don't believe in the concept of an untouched tribe anymore. I think that there are so many ways that communities, whether rural or urban, are integrated into the global world. So one of the first shocks that I had in visiting the Etanga village was the chief's daughter instantly asked us to charge her cell phone.
Really?
Right, so there are networks of connection, there are possibilities already ingrained in the community. And to say that, of course, there's this aesthetic that you mentioned, right? And that aesthetic gets wrapped up into these global images of what it means to be a, quote, tribal community or a community untouched by modernity. But I don't see that playing out in these rural spaces. There are plenty of ways that they understand and interact with the wider and global world. And so this idea that we need to preserve these untouched ancient communities just doesn't seem to reflect the world that I have engaged with. And one of the funny narratives that I have from my first time visiting the community in 2017 was our last evening there. My wife and I visited. The women secluded themselves, and they spent half the day getting ready for this ritual for us, right? And as the sun's going down, they're on top of the hill, and they come down and they're clapping and they're singing. And as a amateur and very uninformed ethnographer and anthropologist at that point, I was like, oh, here's the moment. This is what I've been waiting for, right? And they come and the dust is kicked up and the sun's setting, and it's just this kind of picturesque moment. And as they get closer, they circle and they're dancing and singing, and my translator begins to laugh.
Really?
And I ask her, what, this is it. This is the moment. What's funny? And she looks over at me and she says, they're singing a song about finding a man who has a nice bakkie, a nice pickup truck. So this isn't an ancient song that's passed down through generations and generations. This is a new, lively song about what it means to have a pickup truck, a bakkie in a rural environment, and what a gift that would be, and their desire to meet a man who has such a thing. And so rather than this like ancient ritualistic evening of dancing, this is something else. This is something both traditional, if you will, and modern, if you will. And it's just a small example of the consistency through which they are constantly engaging the outside world.
Yeah, that's so true. As much as they are into their culture, and as much as they are preserving their culture, they are also aware and they are also exposed to other culture and the global community out there. So yeah, and before we also dive into the main conversation as well, I also just want to know, who is Anthony Beall in your own words? Are you a scholar, an activist, or a partner to OvaHimba, or are you something else?
Oh, I don't know who I am, and I think that's fun. But first and foremost, I'm a family man. I'm a father to two and a husband, and that's where I find a lot of joy. I am also, I feel at this point, a friend to the OvaHimba community in Etanga.
Yeah.
And part of that does come with being an academic at the University of Chicago. I've entered into PhD candidacy. And the project, though it's moved slightly away from the Etanga community, it is still rooted in those first experiences with the community. And so, yes, I do have to carry the title of academic sometimes, but I am a friend of the people and a father who just likes to come here and do what I can to engage the people and bring their lovely experience to a wider audience.
Oh, okay, that's quite interesting. Thank you so much for that. And you first came to Namibia as a volunteer teacher?
That's right.
Yeah, and so what moment or maybe realization that pushed you from being just a visitor and becoming kind of like a long-term partner, or wanting to be coming back and back?
Yeah, to be fair, I always had in the back of my mind that the volunteer teaching year would also be coupled with these early ethnographic experiences. That was a goal that I had originally. But it was through this relationship building and the excitement that I found both in myself while there, but also the excitement of the community themselves in having me there.
Yeah.
And that relationship sparked something that I think is lasting. Yeah.
Did you choose to come to Namibia, or like how did it even happen that you have to come and teach here?
Yeah, no, I originally, after graduate school, was set up to do a project in Kenya. That project fell through, and there was just this real desire to come to the continent and participate in something more global. I was at that time trying to find another way to expose myself to a wider world and grow from that experience. And so it was through actually my wife's efforts of finding other ways to volunteer and come to the continent that we landed in the World Teach Organization in 2017, and that thus began the journey that is now a lifelong passion.
Quite interesting, hey? And Etanga also like emphasize community development or community-led development. So why is it important to protect traditions like that, like the Secret Fire, while also building schools and programs? Maybe if you can just give us the background of Etanga Development Foundation.
Yes, and I think this speaks to a larger question of what it means to be a relationship partner with communities, particularly rural communities in Namibia. I did not set out to start a foundation. The foundation wasn't actually my motivation at all. So through these years of engaging the community in Etanga, I think trust was built and a relationship was built that required some form of me figuring out what it means to give back. For so long and for so much of academic history, it's been under this umbrella of what I call academic extraction, right? And that you go into a community, you record, you collect your data, and then you take that data back to the US or other countries, and you perform well in those academic spaces. These are ideas and concepts and worldviews that academia likes to engage with. But what does that mean to only take? Right. And so in 2023, Chief Jimburu sat me down at a table with my translator and his right-hand man, and they asked if I could start a Namibian nonprofit for them, so Section 21. Because I understand this world of academic extraction, my immediate response was, of course, yes. At that time, I did not know what that meant, but it was an opportunity for me to begin to give back and understand the needs of the community themselves. And so through that, I contacted an attorney in Windhoek, where we were able to set up this Section 21. And it, just to be honest, by and large, for about a year and a half, it sat dormant. Originally, the idea was going to be that this was just an organization, a Section 21, where we could begin to apply for grants. And we could write proposals, and I could help on behalf of the community to write proposals using the English skills that I had and the writing skills that I've developed. And that is a way that I could, give back to the community. Unfortunately, as you know, those resources here are limited. And so it was through reflection and more time with the community that here in the last handful of months, I decided there must be something further that I can do from my own vantage point, right? And so I rallied a troop of friends around me in the US, a small group of people that I know intimately.
Yeah.
And together we just came up with modest funds this year.
Oh.
So that we're able to give back cattle. The original request from Chief Jimburu has always been cattle.
Oh.
And we have ways of bringing up and revitalizing the cattle as a herd and as a sustainable source of economy for the community. But along with that comes this idea that we can eventually integrate education systems, both through elder education, artisan education, and Namibia curriculum, right? And so we have a community center that we're looking to rehab, and that will serve as a central place where we can instill and transmit cultural knowledge while also working with Namibian curriculum and educating the youth. So this is a two-way street where we will rely on elders of the OvaHimba community to educate the youth, but also understand that there's a global pull to educate oneself using standard curriculum of math, science, English skills, right? And so together we think that through those two means coming together, we can set up a real sustainable community in Etanga that can thrive with their own cultural vision, not one imposed by me or an outside project.
I love the fact that you are going, or the community is going, with educating the community, or like of making sure that they do not forget their tradition and their background and their root, where they come from, and teaching the generations that are also coming through, but also touching on the curriculum and the global standardized curriculum that is also used. And for the fact that I'm curious, why kettles? Like, why didn't you like come with gardens or other things,
Sure.
like Western kind of like things for the community?
Well, and that's exactly right. There are ways to think through what is needed, right? And from the perspective of an outsider like me, well, water first. Solar panels, gardens, etc., right? And the list can go on and on from my own perspective, right? But the importance here is to listen to the community. And as a historical, reality, the OvaHimba life has been attached to cattle. That is their culture, right? They are a cattle-rearing people. The cattle is an important way. Just through revitalizing the cattle themselves and the herds, the community is revitalizing their culture. They can begin to reinvigorate the same processes that they're used to. But without the cattle, there's no cattle herding. And without the cattle herding, the culture and what it means for the OvaHimba to be OvaHimba is diminished. And that, I think, is what Chief Jimburu sees. He sees his people losing a source of identity. And that identity is rooted in a relationship to cattle rearing. And so, if nothing else, a starting point to empowering his community is through revitalizing the cattle stock that has, from my perspective, since 2017, been decimated. The goats that were once there and the children would take care of in the morning, and I would see them running around and pulling goats by the leg this way. Those goats aren't there. So the pictures that I once had of smiling children taking care of the goats, or the men out in the field, guiding the goats from pasture to pasture, or the herds from pasture to pasture, that opportunity just isn't there as much anymore. And if the Etanga Development Foundation can do one thing and one thing only, it would be to revitalize that cattle stock as a way to empower their cultural understanding. We have further and longer term missions and goals, but as an immediate source of empowerment, right? It starts first with the cattle. And I think that that's a good and pure thing because that request came directly from Chief Jimburu. It wasn't my imposition.
Okay.
And that to me is very important.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. And I also like wanted to know, like, is there something, because like you being engaging with the OvaHimba community and them, like we're having the expertise when it comes to cattle rearing, and where they are also based in the country, one of the dry places in the country as well. Do you think there's something that like the major community, like the world out there, can learn from them, especially when it comes to cattle farming?
Yes. See, this is beautiful. Now we're getting into the long-term goals, right? So the idea now, and just to be frank with you and the rest of the community, is I have 2 years to finish my dissertation. And that, as you know, it's work there, right? And so this is a slow-moving progress, and each year we'll be able to grow our network of contributors. And so, yes, in the immediate goal, we have a 2-year timeline where each year we're going to try and give more and generate more and create a larger network of contributors. At the end of that 2 years, it is time for me and these partners that we've had to really show Chief Jimburu our commitment. And that is when I think we will begin to revitalize and rehab the community center that was left by another missionary project and was left stagnant and without communication or follow-up. And to rehab that, but not rehab that with my own desires or outside desires, but with Chief Jimburu's vision, which is a place for artisans to come in and teach the youth, which is a place where we can do after-school programming rooted in cultural knowledge. And so here's where we get to your direct question about the intellect and the expertise and the cattle rearing technologies that the OvaHimba have within them. That is global knowledge. And that is knowledge that can be valuable to outside of the Namibian borders. So our hope is one day we not only have an education system for the youth, but we have an education system for the globe where people from all over the world can come to Etanga, learn from these experts, these cattle rearing intellects, these people with real sustainable knowledge and how to effectively grow cattle herds and understand the needs of cattle in these arid environments. And that, I think, could perpetuate growth in places beyond Namibia. And so come join us in Etanga. Come learn from these experts, these global experts in this cattle rearing process in arid environments. So that's a long-term goal, and it's a vision we'd like to see through. But yes, it is the fact that these, I had mentioned before, if you go to a database at our own university and you just type in OvaHimba, you're going to get some anthropological work. You're going to get some work rooted in kind of psychological projects and in psychology. But most of it is this expertise that they have in cattle rearing in arid environments, right? And if that can be another source of income and empowerment for the community, then that's a goal that we're going to strive to reach.
Quite interesting. All right. And, you know, some critics actually argue that, which I think you kind of like touch on it also a little bit, that when like foreigners get involved in rural communities, so they risk imposing the outside agendas. So how do you ensure that the foundation isn't repeating those same colonial mistakes?
Yeah, absolutely. And the first is listening. Being a partner and listening. And it's not to say that this is only of their own design, right? This is a partnership and it's a collaboration, and it's through long discussions at tables where we hash out these issues, right? One of the interesting kind of dialogues that we had originally was whether or not children could do the labor. In OvaHimba communities, children work, right? Through chores. They do take care of the cattle. They do collect wood. They do go get water for the community. So originally, when we came up with this idea of elder artisans, educating the youth in their craft building techniques, the obvious solution for Chief Jimburu was, well, the children would be doing that labor. Some of the women, of course, but also the children. Children in our community work. And from my perspective, if we're going to export these crafts to global audiences, I would feel uncomfortable using child labor to do such things. Right? We have different understandings from my own perspective and my own background of what it means for children to do labor and for children to be the source of the economy. So here's a dialogue that we need to work through, right? Here's a discourse of back and forth to figure out what it means to have children be a labor source.
Yeah.
And so eventually what we came through our relationship and through our discussion was, yes, an after school programming. Children can learn these things.
Yeah.
And they can help, through their own sales, they can help pay for school fees. They can, buy books and paper and things that they need for their own education. But in an after school program that is rooted in cultural knowledge, of course, but not spending their whole day making these crafts for export. Right? And so, yes, the children can still work and the children can still learn as a part of their educational system, but not as the main source of the workforce. My vision was no child labor. Chief Jimburu's vision was child labor. In between, we came up with a way that, yes, this is education. And this is empowerment through an economic and a sustainable way to create an economy for them. So children will be learning and selling their goods. That's entrepreneurship. That's education. That's cultural knowledge. Those are good things. But they're not going to sit all day and only do this type of work, right? And so that's the type of back and forth that I think is so fruitful. And it's through conversations and it's through relationships that those type of understandings can produce real ways forward. And it was a tough conversation and it was a long conversation, but eventually we came to an understanding with each other that here's a model that will work for both of us. And it serves Chief Jimburu's vision and it helps me understand what it is to be engaged in the community and help guide and help support and help this community thrive.
Yeah, I can just imagine the conversation because, like, in our community, or let me say, the northern communities, there are certain chores that are done by the young ones. So if you're in the house, you go for kettle railing, you go and collect firewood, you go and fetch water, which is not seen as child labor.
Right.
Yeah, because you are working, but you're not like being abused.
Yes.
But in the global world, there's a different standard. They kind of like classify that as child labor.
And it, of course, in the U.S. or in other spaces, children do chores, right? It's not it's not that chores or work isn't involved in the raising of children in other spaces, but it's when that labor becomes an economic source that it begins to be a bit uncomfortable for me. And what does it mean for them to work, not for chores for the family, which is of course a good thing, but taking that chore into an economic system where you're now producing goods, which is a good thing. As I said, entrepreneurial skills, business and craft skills and cultural skills. Yes, we need that, but we need that relegated to a space that also allows them to pursue their curriculum, gain education. And through that, what might happen if an OvaHimba youth now has the cultural skills and knowledge, but also can write a proposal, also can produce a CV or a resume, right? I have these skills, and now I can show the world these skills through this other education system that I have, right? And so it's a partnership that I hope will flourish into more OvaHimba youth in this space, having the opportunities to take their skills to wider audiences in Namibia and beyond Namibia.
Okay, that's quite interesting. And maybe like looking at Namibia overall, at rural Namibia today, what will you say maybe like, because we are experiencing this drought, this poverty, there's a high rate of unemployment. So what do you think is the single most urgent challenge challenge the OvaHimba faces today, and how is Etanga helping them probably either now or maybe later in the future to kind of like face that?
I think for me, I mean, although I wear the title reluctantly sometimes, I am an academic. So for me, the answer is always education. The school in Etanga, as you might imagine, is struggling, to say the least, with supplies, with support from a wider education system. I understand that previously there was outside funding for mobile schools, because OvaHimba are pastoral people. They move along with grazing and seasonal patterns. And so there was at one point in Namibian history, mobile schools set up to follow them. And with the outside funding relinquished, then that program, as I understand it, is no longer. And so in these spaces like Etanga, the school is, and I believe it is only a primary school, but it doesn't, it's not all of the children in this community have the resources or the ability to even attend the school with the limited resources. So one of the things is getting more children involved in the education system already set up there for them. And then if we can ramp up through our efforts what it means to educate there, right? And we can bring in more resources, then I think we have a better opportunity of addressing what I see as maybe the main concern for me, and I think for Chief Jimburu as well, in that through education, more opportunities for their community can come, and opportunities that they're creating for themselves through education.
Okay, and now I want us to come to like just to focus to kind of like touch on the ritual and the religions, and also like based on the research that you are also working on. So, or your PhD. So your PhD explores like ritual, death, and memory.
Yes.
So what have you learned about the Himba ritual life that most outside completely miss?
My personal fascination is with the sacred fire, the holy fire. That to me is a beautiful way to understand the past and the present and that relationship between the two. It's been my understanding that for the OvaHimba, for many OvaHimba communities, the dead, while they are dead and they are in the past, they're very active in the present, right? And it's through this sacred fire where that engagement happens. The ancestors can be invoked, right? And they can be called upon to help the community through turmoil, to initiate youth into the community, to transfer one family member to another family member through wedding ceremonies, right? And so while, yes, these are things happening in the present, it all works through the ancestors of the past. The ancestors validate these processes by their presence in the moment, where the sacred fire is opened up and where ancestors are called to come in and witness these things. So the dead aren't necessarily gone or dead. They're very much in the present, and they are there to help the community through, see itself through into the future. And so if you need to correct an imbalance, a social imbalance, let us take it to the holy fire. If we need to give a child a new name because he's now at the next stage, let us call upon the ancestors at the holy fire.
So is that something that you kind of like completely only got introduced here, or is this something that you also probably that you kind of like, or you knew based on your culture, or where you came from, your community? Do you have similar stuff or similar cultural practices?
Yes.
Just curious.
No, this is great. This is great. So I'll give you two answers to your one question. So I apologize. The holy fire was not something that I was aware of prior to coming to Namibia. And if I recall correctly, even before going to the OvaHimba community in Etanga the first time, I was unaware of what the holy fire was. It was first introduced to me there and explained to me there, because I went asking questions about their religious worldview.
Yeah.
That was my original interest. And so when I asked them questions about, their relationship to ancestors and spirits, that's where the holy fire began to interject itself into the project in very productive ways.
Yeah.
So that's where I got introduced to the holy fire.
Yeah.
Now, spirit world, ancestors, and relationships to the past through the dead is, yes, something that I'm aware of from my own culture and background as well in the U.S. Part of my own heritage comes from both Native Americans in the U.S. and Native American tribes of Mexico, right? And so through those that revitalization in my own personal history and my own personal biography, that type of engagement with ancestors and spirits was not completely foreign to me. It was something that I could use as a checkpoint or a vantage point and say, well, yeah, there's some similar things going on here. And it made it easier for me to translate into my own worldview because, ancestors, from our perspective, is something we engage with as well, and are revered and respected in the same ways. So while there are, of course, differences, it gave me a touch point to understand a bit more of what was going on in the relationships that they had with their deceased.
Okay. And many urban Africans dismiss like the traditional religion as being backward. Yeah, and do you see a danger in this disconnection from their ancestral practices?
Beautiful. I think there is a danger in setting up a firm dichotomy between missionary religions, Christianity, and ancestral veneration. I think in many cases, these two things can work hand in hand with each other. And that essentially is what brought me to exploring more, particularly with my research project, the Orwano Church, the OvaHimba Church, that does seem to have a consistent relationship with ancestral veneration, while also having this deeply rooted and deep theology of Christian principles and Christianity. And so in that space, there is no tension, right? And it might take conversations to figure out where these boundaries lie and where the ancestors stop and Christianity begins and the overlap between the two. So it's not just this very upfront sense of like, oh, well, of course, right? You don't go to a Orwano church and you don't see ancestors being invoked there. That's not something. But you take those same church members into other spaces and you have further conversations. And then, oh, well, yes, of course, in our village we have a holy fire where we, invoke the ancestors for this reason or that reason. At the same time, they have this deeply rooted and personal relationship with Christianity that fulfills them in other ways, right? And so it's been my perspective that both through the OvaHimba and OvaHimba, who are related communities, that this tension, this binary between Christianity and ancestral veneration collapses. And there's much more fluidity and there's much more understanding that these two things don't need to live in tension. And they actually benefit each other because they serve different purposes and they have different goals. And there's a different way of understanding what it is that happens in a quote unquote Christian setting versus what happens in an ancestral ritual.
Yeah, that's so true. And what you say probably are some of the misconceptions that people had about these communities, or maybe the global world had about this community, especially before you went there, or maybe with this perspective that you went in the OvaHimba community that you had, and you're like, this is actually not true, or it's not actually done like this.
I am equally as guilty as a younger person in 2017 of presuming that this community was going to hold something secret, something ancient for me. I originally went there to collect oral histories, oral narratives, particularly origin stories. At that time in my young academic career, I had this assumption that through the origin story, you could understand a religious worldview. And so my first questions were about their origin stories. Can you guess what origin story I heard?
What did you hear?
A garden, a tree, a serpent, a man, a woman. The Genesis story. That was my aha moment. That was the moment that shook me out of the presuppositions that I had.
Yeah.
The poor assumptions that I was coming in, like many, right? And so I don't blame those who haven't had my experience and haven't had this beautiful relationship develop for having these kind of more global understandings of what OvaHimba people are, right? And what they represent, right? Is this untouched ancient tribe that needs to be preserved. No. They've had this long history of missionization, this long history of engaging the outside world through many means, but one of those means is through missionization in Christianity. And so, of course, they would know the Genesis story. The youth, I think the first person who relayed it was a 21 years old, and then a 70-year-old elder, and then a 45-year-old uncle, and so from all of these different perspectives, I'm getting slightly different versions, but still pretty consistent understandings of the Genesis story as the origin of all beginning. I expected some type of termite mound, and you laugh because this was my assumption. And so I was equally as guilty as anybody else from the global community viewing them from afar, right? And it's only through that interaction and through gaining those relationships that I was shaken out of that, right? And I hope to shake more people out of that and show them the beauty and the sustainability of this community when you engage them on their own terms, not terms set by the outside world.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. So thank you so much. And I want us to move to the political climate now. So like you spend most of your time, or let me say a lot of time in Namibia, but you're an American. So like when you go home, what is the biggest change you noticed in the US today or lately?
It has been troubling for me being back in Namibia, hearing the effects of what U.S. aid and the cutoff of U.S. aid has really done to the people who can use this as a source for growth. And so just today I was speaking with a very intelligent and an inspirational young man who's a part of, let me get it correctly, the Namibian Youth Leadership Forum. I sat and engaged with him today, and he made it very clear that previously they were applying for support through U.S. aid. And that option is no longer there, right? And so we've done something in the U.S. to say that the global community no longer matters. And youth like this young man should have the opportunity to see their projects come to fruition, should have the opportunity to gain aid from outside sources in order to bring their projects to the table, to show their value, to show that, yes, we can be grassroots here too, but we need some support. We need some involvement from the outside world because resources here are limited, right? And there are reasons for that. And there are reasons that other communities outside of Namibia should step up and can step up. So when aid gets cut off in the ways that it recently was, it is time for more grassroots movements. It is time for me to rally a group of friends in the US and say, hey, aid is still needed. And it's not needed in a sense of like saviors coming in and sweeping in with dollars. It's aid in the sense of support. It's aid in the sense of relationship building and understanding. Right? And so is government waste bad? Yes, of course. right? Was there ways that U.S. aid might have been mismanaged? Yes, of course. But does that mean it needs to be cut off without any real understanding of how to better use the aid or how to be more responsible with the aid?
Yeah.
Those are the questions that need to be asked, not just the fact that we're going to cut off aid because there was waste.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's clean up the waste, but let's not make this a cut and dry, now there is no aid. And when you're here and you're talking to the people who could benefit from such aid,
Yeah.
that's when it's discouraging for me as an American to sit across the table and look this young man in the eye and say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that we did that, right? And I can't speak for all Americans. That's not my job. And nor do I have the skills or the knowledge set to do so.
Yeah.
But I can be apologetic on behalf. And I can say, how can I help, right? And so just through that small back and forth, when I get back to my university, I'm going to gather some undergraduates who have the same type of global passion at our university and team them with his group of youth here in Namibia. And together, they can see what they can do.
Yeah.
What beautiful projects might come from this relationship.
Yeah.
And so, yes, aid's cut off. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with how it's done.
Yeah.
So let's rely on grassroots movements for the moment until we can shake up the rest of the world and say, okay, well, let's revamp this program. Let's clean up the waste, but let's get aid where it needs to go.
Yeah. And like you being an American, like an American citizen, and like the whole global world, especially the African continent, kind of like crippling because of the US aid that is being cut. Do you think that is like a good thing for the American citizens themselves?
I don't. I don't see that cutting ourselves off to a global community is a good thing. I've never been one of an isolationist. Do we need to correct our own problems in our country? Yes, of course. But you know what can help correct problems in our own country? Being attuned to other global communities, learning from other peoples and places, and understanding that together we can figure out better ways of our own system to work and for other systems to work and for this to be a relationship. But to isolate ourselves in the US and say, well, let's only take care of ourselves is to say that we aren't already in global spaces. Americans are already here. I'm not the only American here. I just heard a stat that there's somewhere around 150 long-term residents. Now, not all of them have residency status here, of course, but I'm not the only one here, right? And that's the case in most countries throughout the world. You're going to find some so we're already in the globe. We're already impacting through our commerce, through our economy, through, trade and all of these other ways in which the U.S., the American people are already out in the globe.
Yeah.
So why is it that our aid should only go to ourselves? Yes, there are issues with homelessness in America. There are issues with drug addiction in America. There are ways that we need to be corrective in our own systems. But part of that corrective process is understanding that this is a global community and we can help each other in ways unseen if we isolate. Let us figure out what it means to be a partnership with other spaces and have a bilateral sense of growth. Yeah. Right? And I can speak from my own perspective. It feels good to give. It feels good not only to extract my academic currency, is what I call it, but also be asked to help and be in a position where modestly I can. And I can grow that network of contributors. Yeah. And so through that, I understand, and I think more Americans should understand, that aid is an exchange. And some of that exchange is just a good feeling to be a global citizen, a global ambassador. Some of it comes with real ways of shaking up your own worldview and thinking in new ways. like the OvaHimba community inspired me to do. Shake me up out of my understandings of an untouched community that I need to go record and be a proper ethnographer and thick description of everything. Well, come on.
Yeah.
There are other ways to gain this type of engagement and really benefit on both sides of the ocean.
That's so true. And you know, a lot of people actually, like, a lot of people say that Donald Trump is busy shaking up the whole system, and some are even saying he's busy damaging the democracy. But from where you stand right now, how do you see things?
I'm not sure what's happening with the global community
Yeah.
in respects to isolation.
Yeah.
There are nationalist movements not only happening in the U.S., and that's what I call it, for better or worse. It's this sense of your own national identity being superior and more important than any other space, or engaging in any other space, right? And that's happening in pockets in Europe. That's happening in South America. That's happening in the US. And so, yeah, there seems to be right now this real movement towards isolation.
Yeah.
And closing in your borders and only worrying about your own people and their problems.
Yeah.
But as I said, the fact of the matter is these countries are already spread out. The networks of commerce and exchange are already there. So how is it that we can say we want to exchange goods and services? How is it that we can say we want to be able to travel to these places when we want and take the pictures that we want and go on safaris when we want? But aid? No, 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 no. Well, if we're already in this global community, then we should understand that we need a global relationship.
Yeah.
And so I wish I could explain better why these type of nationalist movements are happening.
Yeah.
I wish I had a better understanding.
Yeah.
But what I can say in that regard is I disagree strongly with the idea that isolation is the answer, because we're already a global community through commerce, through exchange. And so to say that aid is only for our own nation and the boundaries need to be closed and people need to stop moving from place to place, it doesn't necessarily seem sustainable to me or make a whole lot of sense. So I hope a change will come.
Yeah.
And I do believe a change will come.
Yeah.
And if I can play a very small, minute, nearly insignificant role in inspiring some bit of change, whether through my own community or the OvaHimba community in Etanga, then at least that's a start for me, because I can't answer these larger political science questions and these global political issues.
Yeah.
I wish I was smart enough to do that and understand how to correct these. So let's start grassroots. Let's do what I can. Let's see Chief Jimburu's vision through and the way that he envisions the sustainability of his own people and culture. And that might be a small example for a few that we are a global community and we can provide support in meaningful ways. And if it doesn't come from the top, it'll come from the grassroots.
Yeah. That's so true. And, you know, we have seen like big protests that are actually happening that takes place in the US. And like, you know, where ordinary people are saying their voices are actually being silenced. So do you think protests can really make a difference?
Yes. Yes. Have we fully come out in the US of the civil rights movement? Have we fully seen Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision through? No. But that civil rights movement is a beautiful example of what protest can do. And we need to get back to a space where we can, you know, create that type of community and create that type of sense of action and activism. Because while we still have racial tensions in the US and while issues are still, you know, being work through in that domain. I mean, the prison system is a great example of where we haven't quite, you know, seen Dr. King's vision through. But the movement that happened during the civil rights movement and the changes that came through that are a prime example of, yes, protests can make a difference. I'll stop there.
Yeah, okay, no problem, no problem. And you know, you have lived in Trump's America and in rural Namibia as well. So do you see unexpected parallel between the Himba survival and the American democracy struggles?
That's a great question. Are there parallels between the two? I would have to think more critically about that. I would have to think more critically about that. That is a fantastic question.
Okay.
Yeah.
And probably like if you compare like what, because you work closely with the OvaHimba people and you have survived so much while keeping their culture alive as well. So if you compare that to America today, what lessons could America learn from the OvaHimba community or like the OvaHimba about resilience and stuff?
I think one of the most beautiful things about the community is their kinship ties and their family networks. In the US, so much of our understanding of family is in that nuclear family.
Yeah.
The mom, the dad, the children, maybe the grandparents. In these spaces, everyone is family.
Yes.
Everyone plays a role, right? And so these kinship ties are so deep and so ingrained. I remember the first time I saw the chief's daughter, Kazilamarta, pick up a child who wasn't hers, that was apparently crying and hungry, and breastfeed it. That's a beautiful sense of community. Children are everyone's children to be taken care of, and to have ownership of and responsibility for. The network of support goes far beyond this immediate family, and it's the whole homestead. And not only is it that homestead, but it's the homestead near, and then the one on the opposite side, and that spider webs throughout the whole community. And so the children are being raised by a community. The people are all responsible for one another. And so in the US, you can live next to the same person, and I think we've talked about this for years and years, and not know your neighbor's name. And by and large, there's at least one set of neighbors I'm guilty of in the US. And so it is a beautiful example about how people can come together with real responsibilities and a real way of understanding community and how we are dependent upon each other. And it shouldn't be a family in isolation. And if that family's in need, there should be other ways that they feel that they can rely on their neighbors. And in that rural space, in this OvaHimba community in Etanga, it's one big giant family. Literally, because that's uncle over there and that's auntie over there, but it's also a sense of we're all raising each other. We're all involved in this space, ancestors included. Right? And so this is a beautiful way of understanding growth together and responsibility for each other. And in the US, the distance that there is between your neighbor and yourself mentally, not physically, the distance is there, but emotionally and mentally, and that can be changed. And we can do a better job of being a community. Because with that, I do believe these issues of mental health become less. These issues of homelessness become less. If you truly think of that person on the street corner as a brother, a sister, an uncle, and an auntie, are you going to leave them on the street? Of course not. That's family. That's kinship. Now, it doesn't have to be blood related. There are other ways of thinking. We are a community. We're a community in a small village. We're a community in a city. We're a community in this neighborhood. Think more broadly about what it means to have deep ties and deep relationships and support one another. So that, we can begin, if we use that template, then we would have less homeless. we would be addressing mental health issues more directly. And we would have ways of understanding aid in our own community that wouldn't be so dependent upon the top-down models, the institutions, the bureaucracies coming in to try and fix the problem.
Yeah.
Because clearly they don't seem to understand or want or know how to correct that issue. Because it's actually, from my perspective, getting worse in the US. Homelessness, drug addiction, mental illness, these type of things.
Yeah, and I think, like, I don't know if that comes with development and also with the separation of class now that happens within communities, because when development is like going up and like that distance also increases, so you're like, you feel like I can't speak to that person, or I can't engage with it, or I have too many things to focus on. I just don't know where the thing, because like in most, like in most of the African countries, very rare to find a person, or not even rare, but to find a person who was just raised by the parents themselves. We grew up in extended families. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have an aunt? What do you mean? Like, I wasn't raised by my own parents, or I was raised in extended. You can be raised like in an extended house. We have cousins, aunts, like the whole, and it's like, and you can't even ask even sometimes like your parents, I need this and this, because the people, the whole house like already provides. So, and I'm like, and I think that's the beauty like of the communities and stuff like that.
Yes, and to your point, with development comes new economic system, imposed economic systems. And with this economic system that, you know, kind of the Western model shoves into these rural communities and in these urban spaces beyond the Western world, it becomes a sense of scarcity. There are only so many dollars. There are only so many ways to be economically engaged, right? And if there's only so many jobs and so many dollars, then competition that was once community begins to divide people and begins to separate people. But it's because we've imposed this economic system that says dollars are scarce, jobs are scarce, and you need to be involved in those things if you want to flourish. And so those communal ties begin to break down, those kinships begin to break down because everybody's after the few jobs or the few dollars or participating in those limited ways. And then that sense of larger kinship ties, about being more egalitarian with how we think about economy, begins to break down and begins to be replaced by this real sense of scarcity and this real demand to be me first so that I can get those scarce resources. I think that's part of the problem we see when we impose other economic systems into these spaces where they weren't, that wasn't the status quo.
Yeah. You know, I'm curious also to know, like, when it comes to your PhD, is it really about knowledge, or is it your way of fighting for a community that the world ignores?
Oh, well, now you want my dirty secrets, huh?
I'm sorry.
To be truthful, I, for probably the first 5 years of my graduate school journey, so starting as a master's and then into the PhD, I completely rejected the idea of quote unquote activism for the community that you research. This was my own personal growth to come to this understanding that no, that idea needs to stop. I think so many academics, for better or worse, rely on the laurels of academic objectivity. I, as a scholar, must be objective. And with that objectivity comes a distance with activism, right? I don't necessarily believe in academic objectivity anymore. I think we're always coming in with our baggage, right? So the project that I'm doing isn't a project on the Orwano Church and Ova Herrera worldview. I can't recreate that. It's also not fully my own worldview, though it's translated through my experiences. My academic project and my own understanding actually becomes this like third thing. And it's a collaboration between my worldview and what I understand to be their worldview, kind of propped up using academic language. But that, for me, what that means is, by and large, because I'm both bringing in my experience and then translating it into this academic language, using the OvaHimba and OvaHerero as a source, that is very subjective. That is me. You can study OvaHimba and OvaHerero peoples from many different perspectives. I chose to focus on the Holy Fire. I chose to study religious worldviews. Those are already subjective interjections into this project. I come with my cameras. I'm already intervening in real ways. So to say that academics collect, are from a objective position collecting data and then objectively transmitting it for academic research, it just doesn't seem to be sustainable, viable, or a real logical way of thinking about what we do in the field. And so coming to that realization meant that when Chief Jimburu asked me to give back, the answer was yes. Because I already know that I'm interfering in the worldview in some ways. For them to exist on their own means I never go there. Right? I never enter their community. By me entering, the dynamics have already changed. And I'm already engaging in the community in ways that would not have been, quote unquote, natural to them, or would not have been a part of their worldview. And so if that's activism, to support the community that have supported my work, then I guess I'm an activist. But I don't see myself in that way. I see myself as a relationship partner, as a supporter of the community, and as a source for them who don't have the same writing and English skills to apply for grants, who don't have friends in the US that can give, right? And so I suppose that's activism in a way. And if need be, I'll wear that title proudly, because I do care, because I do want to see Chief Jimburu's vision for his community thrive and come to fruition. And whatever I can do from my vantage point to assist with that, I'm going to do. And I'm going to be wholeheartedly in that type of mode to perpetuate and to help move forward his vision. And so I suppose that makes me an activist in some ways.
So true. Okay. So now Namibia as a country, or Namibia's development journey we had both like setbacks and some of the achievements that we have, or some trumps that we had as well. But in your view, what would you say is one of the biggest weakness that you have seen in the country, or the biggest strength?
For me, the biggest strength, let's start there, is the resilience and strength of the people. I particularly focus on the OvaHerero and OvaHimba communities. The OvaHerero and their response to the genocide and how they've come out of it and recreated cultural ties and remapped their understandings of the past, and moving their communities forward in powerful ways, challenging the German government and saying, well, no, we need to have a discussion. We need to be at the negotiation tables to understand this historical past and this historical trauma, and try and rectify that in the present. The strength of the people is something that I find admirable. And we have our own history of genocide in the US, and just understanding what it takes to come out of that and show strength and pride in your community and in your culture, I think is a beautiful thing. And so I know resilience can be kind of a loaded word, and so I don't mean to be too trite or too simplistic with that. But there is a real strength and a real commitment that I see in many Namibians challenge the past and move forward in real, new, and equitable ways.
Yeah.
And I think that's beautiful.
Okay.
Which ties to maybe a bit of the weakness that I see is for maybe nobody's fault,
Yeah.
but the systems, the resources to empower those people to make the changes they're looking for seem to be quite limited. Right? There does seem to be a way that some of these resources get stuck at the top and don't trickle their way down to the movements that matter, right? And getting back to the very astute, I can't tell you enough how impressed I was by this young man, Werner, of the youth forum, the youth leadership forum. You know, and that was his motivation. It's like, well, if it's not going to come from the top, it's going to come from the grassroots. And I'm going to do what I can as a University of Namibia political science major to make change here. And it's going to come from grassroots movements, because there does seem to be some distance between the financial support available, how that financial support gets allocated, and the needs and motivations of the people on local levels. And so I think there is a way to answer that through the resilience of the people, and through the strength of the people and the vision that they want to see forward for themselves. If there is some way that Namibians could begin to address that disparity, I think more movements and more growth can happen in really powerful ways.
Yeah, that's so true. And yeah, looking forward, whether in academia, in Etanga, or the US debates, what do you want your voice and your work to stand for?
Relationship building. Global relationship building. My commitment to Etanga is not going anywhere. For better or worse, they're going to have to kick me out, I think, if I do something unfair or don't follow through in the ways that they think. But otherwise, I'm here for the long term. This is a lifelong commitment for me. I have a lifelong commitment to education, which means that I will continue to work as an academic in whatever space that may mean. The university systems in the US seem to be in a bit of turmoil right now, so who knows what the job market will look like. But regardless of where my academic world takes me, my commitment to Etanga and the people there is lifelong. And so that understanding of relationship building and a commitment to people beyond my own world is, I think, one of the things that I want my voice to represent, is that you can serve your academic community, you can serve your family and your own community and your own space, but you can also be an important ally and a source of support beyond that. But it does take relationship building, and it requires a real understanding of the needs of the people and not imposing your own ideas, but going through the tough conversations about what it means for children to do work, to do chores, to be an economically sustainable way for the community to move forward. That's a discourse, that's a dialogue between, right? And it's a challenging one. But if there's relationship and trust, then you can get to a point where the chief and I can mold our visions together and still harness his passion for his people while integrating a little bit of my push towards education, my understandings of what it means for this community to begin to show the world its value, because it does have so much to offer the global community. In a rural space of northern Namibia, the arid environments of Etanga, there's still so much intellect there. There's still so much inspiration there. And it can only be harnessed through relationship building and not imposition.
Okay. And that actually brings me to my last question, or let me say my last question, because like if you could send a message from the fires of Etanga to Washington or any other town, what will you tell the US leaders about development, democracy, and dignity?
It's time to wake up.
Mm.
And I don't mean by any stretch of the imagination be woke, though I don't necessarily consider that a bad thing. I understand why people start to tread lightly but wake up, right? As I said, we are all a part of a global community already. It's happened, and it has happened for centuries, right? I mean, just as a historian, you can look back at the Silk Road. This idea that we haven't been global, right? I mean, humanity is global, right? And so I think right now, Washington in particular wants to say, let's isolate. Let's close our borders. Let's stop our aid. Let's only fix the problems within our own nation. And while I totally support fixing the problems of our own nation, as I said previously, one way to do that is to understand global communities. What are the OvaHimba doing to help drug addiction? To help support communities that experience homelessness? Is there anything that we can gain? Likely so, if we take the time to understand. But if we shut ourselves off, Washington, how will we ever create those relationships? Because there are people that I've spoken with already here in Namibia since I've been back that are angry, and rightly so, that this aid's been cut off. That the health services that come with the aid are no longer there. That the youth leadership that could come from this aid is no longer there. That food distribution is no longer there. Clean up the waste, of course, but do not isolate, because through isolating, we leave partners behind. Partners that can have a real benefit for us and for themselves. But to think only that we are at the top of this global experience, and we need to fix our own problems and let everybody else deal with their own problems, it's just a bad way of thinking about how to be a global citizen and a world leader. And from my perspective, unfortunately, the US is losing that position as a global leader. And to isolate does not help gain back that position. So if we want to be a global leader and we tell the world that we are global leaders, we better act like it. Global leaders don't isolate. Global leaders don't cut off aid to those that need it. That's not what it means to be a global leader. So what does it mean for other countries to come in and offer aid? China, India, Brazil, South Africa. What happens when their aid replaces the US aid? Because that will happen, inevitably. Now we have new global leaders that have global mindsets, that are perpetuating help, and that are assisting communities. Maybe not always in the best ways, of course. There are challenges there, but at least they're doing it. We cannot be, and we cannot call ourselves global leaders if we don't have a global mindset. And so if we want to maintain that position, we better act like it. And acting like it is reinvigorating USAID. It's understanding the needs of the local communities and what you can offer and what they can offer you back. Most of the time, what they offer back isn't monetary and shouldn't be monetary. That's not the position these other communities are in. But it comes through new cultural understandings that can affect our own. It comes through new ways of thinking about agriculture and cattle rearing that can help our own societies or other societies. And so there is another way of thinking about what it means to help and what you get back from that help. And for Washington and other countries and other political centers like Washington to say, no, we're shrinking in. We're closing our borders. We're closing our aids. We're no longer a part of a global community. As a matter of fact, we're going to make it harder on global communities to engage with us through tariffs and through economic sanctions and fighting over visas. And that's not a global leader anymore. That's a global combatant. And if you're going to be a combatant of other nations, at some point that leadership is going to drop and others will replace it.
Yeah, that's so true. And I just want to take you back a little bit, because when you speak of like the drug abuse, the drug addictions and the alcohol abuse and stuff like that, like you being in these rural communities, have you come across that?
Yes. And yes, that's a great question. So we ought not to paint too benevolent of a picture of what it means to be in those rural communities. So yes, there is drug addiction, there is substance abuse problem, mental health issues. Certainly in these rural spaces, there are issues with physical and sexual abuse in these spaces. It's not that they're untouched by more nefarious things. But that said, I think one of the ways that the Etanga Development Foundation can answer that question and begin to instill a change in at least this space is to say, here are your cattle back. You don't have to sit at the tuck shop and drink all day.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to be what you do. You can now go back and rear your cattle. You don't have to just be angry and be upset with your situation. Here's a community center where you can educate yourselves and educate your youth.
Yeah.
And so it's giving means to the people whose means were taken away, right? Part of the history of this community is being relegated to a space.
Yeah.
Right? The tribal authority says this is now your space. These are your boundaries, which was once a very fluid space of movement and pastoral communities, changing grazing lands and seasonal spaces. But if your land shrunk and your cattle are beginning to die off at alarming rates, what happened to that sustainability? What happened to that way of life that was once there, right? And so it's not that I want to excuse substance abuse, mental illness, sexual abuse, physical abuse. It's not an excuse for those things, but it is a way to say that there are corrective measures that can be taken on this small scale. Give people back their resources. Empower people to understand the value of their culture and what they bring to the table. And I think less people would sit around and drink all day.
Yeah, that's so true.
Less people would be angry enough to hit somebody unjustified. Less people would be dependent upon substance abuse or illicit substances to get through their day. Because their culture is back, their way of existing in the world is back, and there's a necessary corrective measure that I think can really impact those darker sides to the rural space. Yeah.
That's so true. So thank Dr. Tony.
No doctor.
Just speaking it.
Thank you so much.
So thank you so much for coming on Africa Speak. And I think like I have asked you most of the questions, most of the things that I at least wanted to ask and or at least that I wanted to share with my audience. But I also just love to give you an opportunity probably to say anything that you feel that I kind of like left out, or did you just something that you probably want to address?
No, I have to thank you.
Yeah.
This has been such a beautiful opportunity to put the Etanga Development Foundation in a space where people can hear our mission, hear what we're about. And so that I can't be grateful enough for. As a final note, I would just say, get involved in whatever way that you think you can. Small steps make big change. Especially if we're taking small steps together. Right. And so there are plenty of ways to get involved. Likely my contact information will be linked here. And so, there's opportunities to involve yourself in whatever capacity you're moved to do. And even the smallest contribution, whether through your own efforts or through financial means, is always welcome. I am not the one directing this, although I am the director. I am one who loves to collaborate, which is why I reached out to you originally. I love the idea of more people getting involved. I call it the beautiful network of possibilities. I don't necessarily need dollars, though they help. What I need is people's ideas. I need their passion, and I need them to bring those to the table because something fun and new is happening here. That I do believe. And my commitment to it is long term. This isn't an imposed project getting dropped off only to say goodbye, good luck. This is a long-term involvement, and this is truly a lifelong project for me. And we're at the very start of it, which is an exciting place to be. And so collaborate, figure out how you can contribute. And I welcome it. I welcome it wholly because I'm only one person. Chief Jimburu's only one person. I can rally a few. He can rally a few. You can rally more. And I think that's the beautiful network of possibilities that the Etanga Development Foundation is waiting to unleash. And we will get there.
Most definitely. So thank you so much. And I believe that with collaboration, you guys, like this project will be able to go far because I think one thing that we love to do is work in isolation and do things in isolation. We don't tend to go far, but if we come together and we work together, we see how we can contribute either individually or one or small, doesn't matter. So, and it will take us somewhere. So thank you so much. And we're wishing you the best, actually.
Thank you so much.
You're staying Windhoek.
All right.